Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn even more money. All in one place, and it's for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup looks like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts, Q&A, and polls has let us be creative on a whole other level. I highly recommend you give it a try. So download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back, X's and T podcast fans. It is Danny here. And you guys, this episode is going to be fantastic. We're back at it again with another Worldwide Dream Builder episode because you guys, this is the one topic that I think everybody who comes here, this is what y'all come for. So thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for everybody who's reached out to want to tell your stories, who has showed so much support and the nice, kind things that you guys say and sharing the podcast. And I am grateful. I think more so it means a lot that the stories that are being shared here are reaching others. So that is amazing. So since we're talking about Worldwide and we're talking about Amway, let's get this disclaimer out of the way because I'm not trying to get sued. Amway and Worldwide, they are two separate entities, two organizations that I do not support. I have beef with them. However, I'm not here to defame them. You know, if you want to join Worldwide, LTD, URA, any of the various Amway lines of affiliation or any other MLM for that matter, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions. Have at it. I do think that it is important to share stories based on personal experiences, personal opinions. You know, for so long we felt suppressed, and I think it's okay to share a story. Everything that we're saying is our own personal opinions, alleged, pretty much everything that I need to say to not get sued, but also we've changed everybody's names too. So with that being said, you guys, I have a guest with me today who our upbringing was so similar, and I'm really excited for her to be able to share what that was like for her. So I have Antonia. Hi, Antonia. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I know that you had reached out to me, and how did you find the podcast?
I know Michael and Michelle. That's not they really their real names, but that's what they wanted me to use. They were one of my first floor plans home that I went to when I first started the process, and so we had quit and we stayed in contact. And she reached out to me through Instagram saying, "Hey, this girl has this podcast, and she's having people testify about their experiences as well." And that's how I heard about you.
Wow. Yeah. I have talked to Michael and Michelle. They are amazing, and you're right; those are not their real names, but their story is very interesting, and I think that they've been so supportive. They are sharing the podcast as well. They're just amazing audience members to have, and I'm really glad that they had introduced you to this platform where hopefully you were able to hear some episodes and something resonated with you, because I feel like unless people have gone through it, but there's so much more that comes, I think, when somebody else has been through it. Was that your experience?
Absolutely. I think there's a different language that we have going on because even when I had my friend Bree quit too. She was in a different same organization, different team, and me and her got an apartment together. And we and her would come home some days if anything triggered us that day, and we're like, oh, because of the business. And it was only her that I would be able to go to with this because she been through it and she knew. So it's like a different language. And I don't want anybody to go through it. Like it's okay if you don't
Yeah.
understand. You know? You
Yeah, it's a good thing.
you don't want to. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Cause there, it is like speaking a different language. And it's one that you're right. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody to go through something like this because it's very traumatic, you know, especially like looking at it after the fact. And, you know, we don't get into these organizations by chance. These are very much by design to find people like us who are in vulnerable positions. And for your story, I am just still so shocked. You found the business. I mean, I guess more or less they found you when you were still in high school.
Yeah. I was 17 years old.
Wow. And that is crazy. So, what is it that compels you to want to share your story?
It's definitely hearing everybody else's story. If I could give somebody the same feeling that they had me feel, which is, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that went into business for 5 years. That's a long time. And I thought I was always like beating myself up for it. So when other people, when I hear it, and it's not a good thing, but I think it was like, a thing that was like, okay, I'm not the only one that lost years of their life to this. And I hope that my story can really like touch somebody's heart as well. Even personal stuff that we're going to talk about too, that could be brought up. And I hope that it really like helps somebody out there. And that's why I want to share my story. Just to
Yeah.
be another testimony, another person to relate to. I really want that because it meant the world to me hearing everybody else's stories on your podcast. So I hope that I can do the same for somebody else.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for wanting to come and to share and to feel that this is a safe platform to do that. I think that's one of my biggest goals is to hopefully have this as a safe place where people can be raw with their opinions and with what they really went through. Because we talk about some really traumatic stuff here. And I
Mm-hmm.
haven't been doing this, but I definitely want to add it in now that I'm going to add a trigger warning purely because these topics can get very deep. We talk about trauma. Some of these things include abuse and DV, and it's just it can get pretty dark. I say
Mm-hmm.
that because in almost every worldwide episode, there has been some way, shape, or form that abuse has come up. So I'm just going to throw that in ahead of time. You were 17. I am still so baffled by that. And you were still in high school. How did you meet who would become your upline?
So I was working part-time at this company retail store called Sports Chalet, and I was working one night, and I worked part-time, of course, because I was still in high school. So I would go do that at night. But they came in one day looking all nice. I'm pretty sure it was after a meeting. I'm pretty sure it was because Starbucks was across the street. We call it Boca Park in Las Vegas. That's where most meetings are at, actually. I'm pretty sure they had a meeting that day, and they were talking to me about success and all this stuff, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And we exchanged numbers, but they didn't call me. It was me who called them because I
Yeah.
was like, well, I want to be successful, and this couple seems legit because they were wearing, fancy clothes. So I might as well call them and, see what they're all about. But I had originally heard about it before through this guy. I'm not going to mention his name. He asked me meaning view one questions while we connected, and it turned into a relationship. It was very short, but it wasn't okay because he was 22 and I was 17.
Wow. Yeah.
And that did go into like as far as me going to my first family reunion and him having to be in a relationship with someone else at the time, and then yeah,
Wow.
so that's how I heard about it. It was through him, and then they came in my life a little bit afterwards, and then they actually did an actual meeting with me. So when I had that meeting and that meeting, one question started coming up, I was like, the same guy asked me the same questions, but I like brushed it off, and I was like, okay, let's just continue doing this meeting or whatever. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. I mean, and we've talked about this before, but
Mhm.
it's crazy because they knew this 22-year-old guy, he knew you were 17.
Yes. Mhm.
That is repulsive. And
Yeah.
so you were groomed. I mean, is it appropriate? Is it okay to say that?
Yeah, like there was definitely like I was coerced with him, like because he would, you know how some guys they keep information from you, so you don't have to make a decision that benefits them. So he
Yeah.
was withholding a lot of information, like the fact that I mean he did mention he had a girlfriend, but he would still pursue me, and I never really had experiences relationships at this point because of how I grew up. So I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, I don't know. He said he had a girlfriend, but he's still pursuing me, so we're just gonna keep talking. So we kept talking, and then he told me he broke up with her, and then we continued dating. And then at family reunion, he told me, oh, but we did have this hotel together. I forgot to tell you that. And I was like, what do you mean you forgot to tell me your new girlfriend that you were rooming with your ex? You know?
Yeah.
But later on, that girl did reach out to me. We both got our closure because we both found out at the end of the day it was him, it was totally his.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really scary. I mean, you were at this very vulnerable time. He took advantage of that very, very clearly. And his upline even, nobody said anything. Like no one was like, hey guy, this is not okay.
I don't know exactly what happened, but I know I told Michael and JC about him, and then I knew that his upline knew. I don't know what really happened. All I know is that it phased out. Me and him, we just phased out. We finally like ended things. And then it was later on where I approached her myself, and I'm glad that like I approached his upline at that moment because it had been like 3-4 years later. And I finally got my closure, and she was on my side saying it was absolutely wrong of him. And he should have never done what he did, and it wasn't my fault, even though I thought it was. Like, it made me feel like a homeworker, because
Yeah.
he was in something else, so yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad that so Mark and JC are the ones who gave you that closure, right? The upline platinum couple.
So Mark and JC was my upline,
Oh, okay.
and then his upline was another platinum in the organization.
Oh, so were they all under the same diamond ship?
Yes.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
wild. Yeah. I'm glad somebody said it though. I'm glad somebody told you that it was not okay.
I actually like ran into him 4 years later at a store, and then I saw that he was like then later on, he asked me if I was still in business. I said yeah, and then I saw him again. I think he rejoined the business again, and me and
Oh,
him, I would see him around, but I would just not look at him. I wouldn't talk to him. I would just block him out because I did not want any interaction with him. And then
yeah.
I'm not sure if he still is or not, but then later on I ran into him again, but he was with somebody else with a baby. So I don't know. I don't know what the
Yeah. He's probably entangled in a full ass web, some
yeah.
sort of
So
deception.
yeah, so I'm just like, it's weird that I ran into him a few times. After that, I was like, yeah, I just didn't want to look at him. I was like, no, there's
Right.
what we had was gone and it's over. And you did what you did, and it's whatever. It's
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that at some point you did get that closure. So let's talk about your upline now, who they found you after the fact. They're asking the same meet and greet questions. They also knew that you were 17.
yes, and they did ask my mom's permission at one point, and my mom was like, "Well, if this is what they want to do, then it's okay.
Yeah.
As long as they take you seriously, then that's fine." So my mom did the okay, and then it was fine the rest of the time.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. That's crazy. Had your mom heard of Amway before?
She did. And I remember getting in the car and she was like, "Oh, it's Amway," and she was just saying, "Oh, okay." I'm not sure. I don't remember if she warned me or anything, but she knew. I know that she's heard of it. That she heard of it. I think everyone has heard of it, honestly. Like like
Yeah.
the old, Gen X or whatever. I think they've heard the boomers. I think they know about it. All of them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. My dad had been approached twice when he was younger, when I think he was in his 20s, people were approaching him. And as he got older, nobody approached him anymore, which is funny, but it's probably because they only go after young people. I mean, sure, there were definitely older people. I mean, one of my downline was in her like late 50s, early 60s, but that was not the norm. And the fact that these people really thought it would be okay to go to a 17-year-old who is still in high school and be like, "You want to join my cult?" Because at this time, you had no idea it was a cult environment. And
Yeah.
I'm going to use this word again. It sounds like they also groomed you. I mean, sure, maybe it wasn't in the same way as this previous 22-year-old guy, because of course that is a different level of sinister. But
No, it is because like I think we talked about this last time. It is because we our brains are not developed yet. So it's
right,
like as an example, like a child being a 5-year-old not knowing the electrical thing.
yeah,
It's wrong, right? But they don't know. So it's like telling him, yeah, it's okay. Go touch
yeah,
it. But they don't know any better. And so it's the same thing on our situation, my situation. I was 17 and they were older than me and had more life experience than me. So it's like you saw in hindsight, and they also knew my situation. I'll tell you how my senior year looked like, and the fact that they didn't say, hey, maybe you should not get involved at this time because we don't feel like it's the right time for you. So I wish they would have maybe done that, because when I was that senior year of high school, the cops were called 10 times, CPS was called 4 times while I was still in business because of all the things that was going on at home with my mom and my parents basically. And I went to juvie at one point because my mom had put her hands on me and like, she hit me, and cop didn't get my side of the story. He just took me kind because my mom lied and said, oh, I hit her.
Uh,
And so next, you know, I had a board plan after I got out and I saw her and she's like, well, maybe next time, you know, try not to like, you know, get her at that point or whatever. And I was like, and I, you know, at that point in my life, I was like, yeah, you're right, you know, whatever. But now looking back, I'm like, if you knew that this was going on with me, like, I think you should have told me to like, hey, I think this isn't good right now for you
yeah.
to join.
Yeah. How
Mhm.
insulting though that they said we'll try not to get her to that point. And let me tell you, we've had long conversations about this,
Mhm.
but girl, I get it. My mom is very similar where she has the narcissistic traits. She has borderline personality disorder. She would twist things to be
Yes.
my fault. And I had absolutely heard that too. Well, don't get her to that point. Excuse me. You don't know how little it takes to get her to that point.
Yeah.
At the drop of a fucking hat, she gets to that point. So it's like it's insulting for one that they did that for you. But two, you're absolutely right. They should have recognized that this was, I'm going to use this term, this was out of their pay grade. This was above them. This was something that they never should have ever thought that they could advise on. If anything, if they knew the situation and they really wanted to help you, they could have been like, hey, girl, go to therapy. Like, none of this is normal. Like, are you like asking you if you're okay? Maybe helping you find some resources to help you with even just your mental health at that point. How can they help you get through and cope through your high school, like your senior year of high school? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they could have at the very least found a resource and moved the fuck on because that was something that they never should have spoken on, period. And I am so frustrated the same way that you are that they did not tell you, like, hey, maybe not right now. Maybe seek help this way. Once you get help, maybe we can reconnect after that. Unfortunately, we all know that they are not great people and they
Yeah.
will continue to manipulate you because it benefits them. And my dad actually
That's what I
said
was
this
going to say.
perfectly. He said the way that they act is if they want us to stay in those toxic spaces because then it keeps us reliant on them and it keeps us vulnerable to continue
Oh,
believing them.
absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say that. Like, it was like, they will help me if it benefited them. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
Right. So they just were just there
Yeah.
for me because it benefited them and their business.
Yeah. That's so fucked up. And that's just that was the beginning. Like I am just so
Yeah.
angered for you
This
about
is
that
just,
because I
this is year one.
right? This didn't even be full year. This is just the fact that you were 17. Like you and I'm going to say this because I said these words before. So the reason why this whole grooming aspect, especially you being 17, it's triggering for me because if anybody out there has listened to my previous episodes about domestic violence and the trauma that I went through with Kyle, then you know about Kendra and Lulu who were both 17 years old in their final senior year of high school being groomed by Kyle. Like these girls, and similar to you, you should have been focusing on your senior year. Like senior year is like a big deal. There's so much that happens. There's so much fun. There's so much to be done. And I mean, your home life should have also offered that to you as well. But at the very least, school could have been this outlet for you. Whereas school, it almost becomes a secondary when you have grooming going on from a toxic male or a toxic like business. Did you feel like you even really got a senior year in high school? Because you were working part-time too.
Yeah, I did not. Only because a lot of it was with my mom. I knew that they knew that there was it was our last year before we are actually adults that they can lash out whatever they need to lash out on. So either way, I would not have had a senior year. But I hated it because when I was a senior and going through the process, like, you know how you're so egotistical in the beginning? You're like, I got
Yeah.
this in the back of my pocket. Like, I met this couple that retired young. So I was doing
Yeah.
that a lot too. And I hate it. I hate myself for it.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to college." I'm like, "I'm not because because I met those people."
I've been
And
there.
like, yeah, so I just either way I wouldn't have gone. I didn't like my senior year of high school. I think I was gonna quit I was in sports as well. So mind you, in the beginning in August, I also was out because when I say we, I'm a triplet. So it's me, my sister, my brother, and my sister will be on and off in the business with me as well.
Yeah.
She's identical to me, and so me and her did cross country together. So mind you, I was in this process business, doing school, part-time job, and I was in a sport.
Yeah.
So that's the first like 3 months of my senior year. It was a lot.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you play? What was your sport?
I did cross country. I did it
Oh yeah.
all 4 years of high school. I did track for two, did swimming for one. I loved it. I think cross country was like the catapult to my whole life because I really it did teach me like to be healthy and to exercise and like I loved it. I loved being in cross country.
Yeah.
It was great.
You have to love it, right? Because you're you're running from nothing.
Yeah, I know you're running
So
for
we
nothing.
always, but wow. So yeah, sports was, I'm sure, a very good outlet for you to be able to have that, especially with running. From what I understand, there's a level of endorphins that you get from running.
Mhm.
And did you feel like that was something that at the very least kind of helped you escape what was going on at home, what was going on even through the business? Or were you still doing that
Absolutely.
while you're in the business?
I was still doing cross country while I was in business.
Wow.
Yeah, I had there was a lot of reasons why I quit cross country. Like we almost quit cross country early. Like we weren't gonna finish the last race we had of the season our senior year because we just felt betrayed also by our coach because we were loyal to him and he didn't make us captains, me and my sister. And mind you, we
Wow.
were pretty fast. We were like for how short we are, like we're 5'3". Like my fastest mile was 6:08.
No
Um,
shit.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, my fastest 3 mile was like 21 minutes. So it's like we were pretty fast. We were pretty good runners and like and we were gonna quit. We quit before our last race, but we finished the last race. It was fine. But we just felt betrayed because, like he didn't make us captain and we stayed loyal to him for so long. But
Yeah.
we did that on top of being in the business and going to board plans. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy to think about. You're in sport in high school, and this fucking business was like, hey, come do this too. Spread yourself so fucking thin at the age of 17. How did you get to functions? How did you get to board plans? Because you guys didn't have cars, right?
No, we didn't. My mom and dad would take us sometimes, or we will ask for rides from people because we were also I was still going to church too, the Mormon church at this time as
Oh
well.
yeah, that's right. You were LDS at the time.
Yeah, and so I grew up Mormon, yeah. So I would contact them to give me rides. And I think finally I was able to I got a car. Like I traded in my car that I my mom and that I paid for, and then I told my mom just give me the other one, and I'll give you this one. So technically, I paid for it for myself. It was a effed up Mitsubishi, so I got that like towards the end of like just around when I was about to turn 18. So almost the
Yeah.
first after the first year of business, yeah. So it was a struggle too
Wow.
because in the beginning that was a red flag that I was like, oh, that should have been a red flag to me. Was we had,
Yeah.
I forgot what they call it. It's a Monday meeting. It's not a board plan or a second look. It's more like it's something. I forgot what it's called, but it was on Monday nights. I'm sure Michael and Michelle, they will mention that. So it was on a Monday night at the New Orleans Hotel in Las Vegas, and mind you, where the New Orleans casino is, it's very sketchy. It's not in a good site. It's not a good area. That's what I'm saying. I wanted to get a ride from Mike and Jen after that meeting was over, and they hesitated. They were like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't. Are you sure you can't call anybody else?" And so we felt guilty. Me and my sister felt guilty, because she went with me. I was like, no, yeah, never mind. We found someone else. It's okay." But we actually did not have a
Wow.
ride. So we were 17-year-old girls in the sketchy area, and they told us not to cross line, but we asked somebody else anyway for a ride. And
Good.
so she was under the organization of the guy who talks really fast sister. So she
Oh,
gave her
okay.
she I would talk to her a lot throughout the functions and throughout the years of business, but she gave us a ride and I was really happy about that. But yeah, it was very yeah, that was one of the red flags and we that should have been we were both like, why can't you just give us a ride? It's not that big of a deal.
So you're in what would have been an unsafe area for 17-year-old girls, things that were not ideal for you at that age. And they had no empathy enough to they convinced you to go to this meeting, but they couldn't for the life of them give you guys a ride home. These two 17-year-old in high school girls, like that will never cease to amaze me. Like those words, I just cannot fucking believe that. I think that is just so, so scary that
Hmm.
these people really did that. Did they? So, okay, with your process, like when did you finally launch into business?
It was the summer before my senior year of high school that I we were in that process.
Well, hold
So
on.
we
I'm
did
sorry. What? One more.
the summer before our senior year school year started that
No way.
summer.
So you were okay. Hold on. I'm so sorry. I did not grasp this aspect. So your entire senior year was the process.
Yeah, the entire year was in I was in business. Hmm.
Oh my gosh. I did
Mhm.
not, like, the dots did not connect in my head. I'm assuming it's like midway through, you're almost
Yeah.
done, and that's why they thought this was no shot, dude.
Yeah. So it was August 30th, 2015. So I think it was maybe a week or two after school started, I launched. And then I graduated in 2016. And then yep, like that was my first year in process. And yeah, it was so the meetings were meeting group one, meeting group two, board plan one, follow up one, board plan two, follow up two. So I did all that. And then we maintained our process throughout until we actually had the money to launch. And when I was working part-time, I did, and we launched. We just couldn't we launched and we couldn't sponsor anybody. That was the thing. That's it. I remember. You can launch your business at 17 years old with your parents or guardian, like, saying yes, but you couldn't launch anyone or sponsor anyone until you were 18.
No way. Oh, so
Yeah.
you're oh my
So
wow.
that's how it happened. I was like, why? No, it's not that. No, we absolutely launched our business. We absolutely paid for the kit and everything when I was 17, and then at 18, and that was the rule. We just could not sponsor anybody until we were 18. That was the rule. Yeah.
So then what's the point of you having been there? Like, how did they spin that? Because I know you're vulnerable, you're 17, it's not by any means your fault. I'm just, how did they make that sound like a good idea? That like, hey, your first year in business, you like actually can't build the business. You can buy all the products, you're expected to go to all these meetings, but you can't actually build the business.
Yeah. So I guess I did my while I was at school, basically. Like I
No
would,
shit.
yeah, I
Wow.
would talk. I would talk to my friends about it and made it my one person that I talked to for the day.
These were other
Yeah.
kids. But honestly, that's how it is though. Like when you get in at what age you are, you tend to either talk to people who you talk to people who are within like 2 to 3 years of in your age group. I know for me, most of the people I would talk to when I was 23 were like between, 23 and 30. I definitely had people who were older than me down in my up or in my downline, but that wasn't the norm. We definitely had a lot like leaders were like my age, leading their parents, leading old people, leading people who had children when they didn't have children. Like I remember in Ariel and Ksenia's episode, Ariel would say that. He's like, I'm just some dude in my 20s giving like coaching to a family
Yeah.
who had kids. I was like, yeah, like that's wild. And that was the norm. But
Yeah. I would launch
wow. So
people who are
you're
older than me.
oh my God, and you were 17. Okay. So you finally graduate high school
Mhm.
and how long after you graduated did you turn 18?
So I turned 18 in my senior year of high school. So April 29 is when I turned 18, and then June of 2016 is when I graduated. So
Wow.
I turned 18 like towards the end of my senior year, basically. So in April.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm just so shocked still that, it's just the fact that Amway even allows that. Like, yeah, you can do it with your parents' permission. That's so like strange because I know even like the only other thing that I know that you can do at 17 if you have a parent's permission is join the military in the US. That's the only other like thing that I've heard of that like, oh, a 17-year-old
Yeah.
can do this with parents' consent. So what did life look like after you had graduated? I think it adds perspective, did anything get better at home once you joined the business and it had finished high school?
Absolutely not. I stayed one more year at my mom's and then she would kick me out. So it was a lot. In general, I'm not going to go into like just all I know is that's when the moving out and moving in started at 19. It was just like in and out, like from my mom's to someone else's house because how my mom is, from my mom's to somebody else's, from my mom's to somebody else's.
Yeah.
So I was just trying so hard to keep the business together. That's why I moved so much, and it's really hard living with people. That's all I can say. That's why the in and out of it was happening. It's just hard. It was just hard, you know.
Yeah, right. Because I can relate to that too. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't or haven't gone through it or understand that lifestyle, it's like you're in an unstable situation where you've never really been taught stability. And so it's like every time you leave, it's almost never really because you chose to. It's never really because you planned, like, hey, I'm moving out. Let's make this a good decision. Like how can we go about this the right way? But when you have toxic parents like that, you find a way out. You have to find a way out, and a lot of the times
Yeah,
it is into these other unstable situations. And then of course by design you end up having to go back home again because again there was no real pre-plan. I've been there. The amount of times that I
yeah.
had to go back home because
Oh yeah.
I would leave my mom and I'd want to leave my mom and she would kick us out. But then
Yep.
because she kicked us out and offered no room to create a healthy environment for ourselves, I just ended up right back. Like
Yep.
it's
Yep.
say
Yep.
wow.
Yep. I was always having an escape plan, always. There was
Yeah.
always an escape plan growing up. Like, okay, if not this house, this house. If not this friend, this friend. And if not this friend,
Yeah.
this friend. Yeah. So then,
Wow.
yeah, and I brought that into the business. Yeah. So,
Wow. Yeah.
mhm.
And that
The things that
yeah.
absolutely did not get better at all. To this day, when I'm out of business, and my mom is still the same person. She also like, did a lot in my pregnancy as well. Like it just like making it seem like she was gonna help me, and she absolutely did not. So I'm living with my roommates as a single mom, and she's not gonna change. So
Yeah.
I'm cool with it. Like I've accepted it.
Hey, I totally get it. It's a rough spot to be in, but you throw worldwide on top of it with how young you were. I am just still so baffled by this. So once you're graduated with high school, and I know that you're kind of moving in and out of these different spaces, like what did being in business look like, and what kind of expectations did they have on you, and were you meeting those expectations?
So I can tell you right now, I was the perfect leg. I did not have a car payment, so I had a lot of money. I was able to, I always found a job to pay higher so I can do a higher ditto. So when I turned 18, luckily I found somebody in the church who got me into a full-time job that was exactly 8 to 4:30. And so at 18, I started working that job. So immediately I was on fire. I
Yeah.
was talking to people every day, trying to create, doing a ditto, 300 PV as a single, 300. It's $1,200 every month
Oh,
for about 5 years. hmm Um,
wow.
yeah, and I mean, I was core every day. I mean, I was core every single day. I heard audio every single day. I read for 15 minutes every day. I made sure I made a conversation every single day while I was in business. And it wasn't, it would, they, when in your follow up, that's when they really talk about the daily, weekly, yearly, monthly habits with you. And it's crazy because I've heard other stories how they, more extreme stories in your podcast where they really shamed them for not following the partnership. They didn't shame us. It was more like you just felt guilty in their board plans if you didn't do it, or they would give you looks, right? They wouldn't verbally say it, but they would like, you know what I mean? They would make you feel
Yep.
that way because how they talk so passionately about work habit and the partnership, and they just because
Yeah.
of the intensity of those conversations or those trainings every time they had it, you just felt guilty leaving because you just weren't communicating or you just weren't doing what you were supposed to.
Right. You're not on your uplines team. You're not following the plan. You're not following the partnership. You're not or not honoring the partnership. Like just all of the really and that doesn't sound so bad, but it's degrading. Like
hmm
the way that it makes you feel as a human is just it's so frustrating. So you did
hmm
300 PV every single month and you bought all of it.
Yeah, yeah. I always had extra stuff, extra products all around the house. I was giving them away. Like was so like blind that it's like that should have been something that was like, I don't need this month, so why am I buying it? Why am I buying extra of this all the time? And they're everywhere in my house? So that should
Yeah.
have been
And like
something I should have
extras.
saw, but I didn't. I would just following blindly, basically.
But they paint it so well and they make you believe that they're also doing this. That's how they got to where they were. They're buying all this
Yeah.
product and they're just teaching other people how to buy stuff. It is deceptive. So what was your honeymoon phase like? So it's not like you said you're on fire, you're honoring the partnership, you're doing 300 PV, you're talking to people like how long did your honeymoon phase last and what was it like?
Definitely, like pretty much the entire time until I quit. Like quitting wasn't so slow. I think it took me like 2 weeks, maybe. No, it took me maybe a few months. But up until the very end, I was on fire. Like I was,
Yeah.
yeah, I was definitely having meetings. I was like, I kid you not, when they said 10 people a month to have meetings with, I kid you not, one time I had 10 people in one week. because I was just
Wow.
working so hard. Yeah. And that's another thing I want to get into too was their coaching. So the first 3 years in business, I was learning my people skills, like trying to, and it was very awkward for me. Like my older sister I would go to stores with her, and she's like, maybe you shouldn't like. It was saw the awkwardness, trying to build my people skills, and like, but every time that I would like shoot this Kate and back and forth, her coaching was very like, good job, on to the next, or like, I wouldn't change anything, keep going. And I think I would have made more progress had she tweaked it more with me. And like I've noticed that when I started getting downline, how she would coach them the same way, and how much more traction that they got when I started coaching them myself and started tweaking them. Because I'm a very authentic person and very real person. I think that's why I went to Eagle, was because that comes naturally to me, just being very real and authentic to people. But I think I think they kind of sabotaged my business in that way too. I don't, they, because they don't want you to succeed more than them sometimes. People who are in the higher pin levels, they don't want you to go further than them. So they did. I do feel in some way they sabotaged me in that way, because they knew that I believe I would have probably gone on a higher pin if she would have just taught me right. But she didn't. So you know what I mean? Like they sabotaged it for me, because it took me 3 years to finally be authentic, or finally like actually know how to conversate with someone. And they're like, no,
Mhm.
you're supposed to learn that on your own. And I saw that my downline was like sounding like robots. I'm like, you can't sound like that. Like sound real. And I was manipulating them too, obviously, because when you're out of it, you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, you know?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, we've all been there. Anybody who's been in the business, we're all guilty of at one point or another. And I've never had anybody deny it either. I think that all the guests that I've had have been so incredibly transparent about the fact that, yeah, we were out there manipulating people too. We are so guilty of that because we thought we were doing the right thing. We were their saviors. We were told, like, this is the greatest opportunity in the world. And if you don't share it, you're selfish. So, how can we keep that to ourselves, especially when we're really excited about it? Like,
Hmm.
there's so much that comes into it. So I'm thinking that we're gonna need a part two because your story
Absolutely.
is just beginning.
I know. I know. This is not even like all of it. There's so much more to share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we're excited to hear the rest of it. At this time, what I want to say is that, I'm really excited that you came here and are wanting to continue sharing your story, and your reasoning behind it is so selfless. So at any point during the business when you were manipulated into being, this selfish manipulative person, it's very clearly not who you are. And it's not who any of the other guests that we've had on here are. And I think that that's why we as people end up leaving, because it's like we cannot keep doing this to people, but we also recognize that the treatment from our upline, it just never gets better.
Mm-mm. Oh yeah, like even when towards the end of quitting, um, I was telling them, hey, this is what you guys should really work on. This and this is what I see, and you guys are not. And then like, oh yeah, we'll work on it. Then a couple more floor plans. I'm like, wow, they're really not changing. They're robots too, because he's always sounding like the guy that talks really fast. He always sounds like him, always at the board plans.
Yeah.
He wasn't changing, and I didn't like that. I'm like, well, and I was like, you know what, like, there's more to it, but that was one of them when I was like, I'm out. You guys are not changing at all with what I just said. You know, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. You're not wrong. Yeah. Wow. And you guys, I'm telling you, this is just a fraction. This isn't even half of her story. So please stay tuned and come back and listen to part two. If you guys want to be like Antonia and you want to share your story, please message me on Instagram at xsnt.podcast. You guys can find the X's and T podcast on TikTok. You can find me on anywhere that you guys can find podcasts. I'd be really happy to help you share a story, whether it's MLM related or not. We're here to spread awareness. So thank you so much again for your time, Antonia, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Bye.